now I want to give the floor to Céline Prévost, who we call a leading witness, we could say. She is from TM Group, but she is going to use a different hat for commercial director of the downhill skiing Courchevel-Méribel 2023 games. So thank you so much for being with us this morning. The topics seem to be sort of like side, but there are side things, but they're very important. So when you are working on the World Championship in Méribel-Courchevel, what were the challenges? Well, there were a lot, a number of challenges, just like what a lot of events are experiencing. You know, if it's the size of the Olympic or Paralympic Games or World Championships or yearly events, there are a lot of challenges, such as the acceptability, the ownership of the events. In the mountains, more specifically with Winter Games, the challenge was even more present, even more keen. So it was something very important. Sustainability was a huge issue for us, a huge challenge. But it was also trying to insert ourselves in a mountainous area, to bringing together two different ski areas. It's a very special context. You know, it's a kind of like, there's so many different layers in a ski resorts. There are a lot of stakeholders, and we had to make sure that we could make everyone work together. So that was some of the challenges that we had before the World Championship. Exemplarity, yes, because people were looking at you very closely. The opening ceremony, people were wondering whether you were able to do it. And then for you, there was an additional challenge. Is why having the World Championship, maybe we'll have again this kind of challenges before Alp 2030. So in order to challenge you, to make you go even higher, even further, did you you had external help? Yes. Right from the beginning, we had a CSR committee with a lot of stakeholders, with nonprofits, such as, for instance, Protector Winter, the Water Family. We wanted to bring them on board right from the beginning in that committee, so that they could challenge us on the decisions we were making, so that they could be actual stakeholders in the whole organization, so that they could advise us on the very structuring calls that we have to make in terms of catering, transportation, in terms of merchandising, etc., etc. So, and this CSR committee, beyond working with just nonprofits, it was also to make sure that the territories would be on board. If we need to, the companies that bring people uphill, we need the town halls to work. Everyone had to be focused on those challenges and to make sure that the whole playground was respected. So the committee, that CSR, was a good place so that all the stakeholders could meet, could make the right decisions, share the challenges together, and rise to them and deliver what we had to deliver. So what are your takeaways from organizing the World Championship? The first takeaway is that it's exactly that, is that we really need a world championship or a large sports event. You really need to bring everyone on board. You really need, for it to be a success, you really need to have shared objectives, shared challenges, which means that uphill, you really need to share all of this. At the moment you are an applicant, you tender for a big event, you have to have that in mind right away, right from the start. So we didn't have a lot of time. The organization committee was set up approximately 3 years before, and then we had a full team for 2 years approximately. Of course, there are players that are already there locally on the territory, such as the appeal company, but also the instructors. But all of them, everyone has to work together. The temporary teams and the teams that are local and permanent, they have to work together, and then structuring choices have to be made. You know, the budget, make sure that the environment, if you want to make sure the environment is respected, it's a budgetary choice. So anticipating and making sure that all the objectives are aligned are things that I believe are very important. Are there anything, kind of actions that you would like to share in order to meet the responsibility, sustainability challenges? You know, there was controversy because there was fake snow that was brought to the Grand Borneo, so we had to manage that whole issue. So what did you do? What kind of actions did you make to make sure that the games were as respectful of the environment as possible? Well, we implemented a lot of different things. We had the feeling that ski and winter sports were sometimes it's irrational, but are seen, are judged. There are a lot of different players that work daily to make sure that the mountain is the first that bears is at the forefront of climate change is exemplary. So we worked with Meribel Alpina, a company that brings people up. It belongs to the Compagnie des Alpes. They've already implemented a lot of things. They have the alternative fuel for the machines they use to pack snow, the water management, energy management. It's already there. So it wasn't a completely virgin territory, but a lot of new things had to be implemented. And one of the things that was very helpful for us is to have ambition, to have, you know, beyond just signing a charter for large sport events with WWF and the sports ministry. We went even further. We decided to have the ISO standard 121 in order to so that we had that certification that we were monitored, we were followed. It was a governance tool that enabled us to have that approach because we were audited at different stages of our approach, and we were able to actually implement those actions right. So if you, from a practical point of view, examples of what actions that we took, we had a partnership with Enedis that was a first for them before the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games, in order to make sure that all our energy needs were plugged to the grid. So we didn't have to use generators that use fuel. And that enabled us to reduce our carbon footprint from a huge way. You know, there was the test event the year before, and the World Championship. We were able to bring them down in an incredible manner. Then the generators, of course, we had to have them, but the rights owners didn't want to plug themselves to the French grid. They were wrong, but they didn't want to, so we had to have hydrogen generators, but we really wanted to have an energy policy that would be really far-reaching. And then we had 2 days on where catering was only vegetarian, so we had a whole transportation planning for collective transportation to bring people to the right spots. So we implemented. So certification enabled to make decisions with each person responsible for each sectors for large actions with priorities, with targets to meet. We managed managed to implement that. As a commercial director for merchandising, I had over 50% of the products that we were selling were manufactured in Europe. So it was a challenge for the person who in my team was working that, and we went even beyond, and we had a responsible procurement experience. So with hindsight and in the perspective of 2030, what do you think are areas of improvement, special topics on which you think you haven't reached yet, but better things could be done? Well, in my opinion, as far as we are concerned, to start with, there are a few criteria that we did not manage to meet in the objectives that we had set for ourselves, sector by sector. So, for instance, we wanted to have an event that would be 100% accessible for people with mobility issues, and we ended up with only 70% of our sites that were accessible. We know mountains are complicated for people with limited mobility, and then with the snow, of course, it's not true for anyone who is disabled, but for people with mobility issues, it's an added complexity. So we did test in 2022 prior to the championships. We thought we were ready for the 2023 championships, but there were constraints that prevented us from meeting that target. But there were ski resorts that have schools for that do disabled skiing, but we didn't manage to reach that objectives completely. And then we've talked a lot about the environment, but in a maintenance area, there's a whole inclusion aspects that we would have liked to bring, but it's not a large urban center, so getting children or adults who are not very included in the mountain, it's difficult to bring them because you have to bring them from further afield. So that's also part of the challenges. Inclusion in the mountains, in the mountain regions. Ski resorts can be seen as elite kind of area. So we did have tried to have work in that area, but we would have liked to go further. But as you said in your introduction, the whole thing is about anticipation and being able to implement things way ahead of time, appeal, and bring everyone together around the table. And yes, there is a political will that is also very important. The organization committee has to have to share the same will. You have to, be there in the long run. Those policies are difficult to implement, and the minute there's a little bit of a hiccup or a budget issue, it's very easy to renege on some of your commitments that you made at the beginning of your mandate, of your term. So, in my opinion, this is really all about this: is to have consistency between the project and the actual performance, even though, of course, you're going to go through ups and downs in doing so. Thank you very much, Céline, for the story about Méribel Courchevel that took place already 18 months ago. Thank you so much for being with us. We are